The Tokyo Marathon takes place each year in March. It's one of the six marathon majors, and it's got a reputation of being one of the hardest for a Westerner to get into. So, in this film, I'm going to share how you can get into the Tokyo Marathon and share some of my reflections on having done the race last year. Like most big city marathons, the Tokyo Marathon has a ballot. In fact, it has three, one for Tokyo residents, one for One Tokyo members, and a third ballot, the general ballot, which is probably what you will be entering through. The figure that I've seen banded around for success rate in the general ballot is about 2%. The ballots tend to favor Japanese people and Tokyo residents. So really, the ballot is something that you could put your name into, but you're very unlikely to get a place in this way. We will come on to charity places in a minute, but the charity places are selected before the general ballot is decided. So it's not possible to enter the ballot, and if you don't get in, choose to go through the charity route. You really have to decide whether you're going to go for the ballot and be prepared to likely be knocked back, or whether you're going to go for one of the other routes to get into this race. The second way to try and get into the Tokyo Marathon is through their virtual challenges. They run eight virtual challenges during the year, and from each of these, they select 50 participants and offer them a place in the marathon. On top of those 50 per race, they also offer 100 people who complete six of the eight virtual challenges a place in the race. The cost of doing these isn't a huge amount, maybe $10 per race, but the chances of getting through this way are pretty slim. I've seen it mentioned on the Brilliant World Marathon Majors Facebook page by Robert Wang that he put the chances as low as 1.7% based on people in his group. So it's a way that you can try and get in, but it's pretty unlikely that you'll get in this way. One of the most popular ways for Westerners to get into the Tokyo Marathon is with a charity place. The good news here is that charities in Japan seem to expect a lot less money than the equivalent organizations in Europe or the US. The way that it works is you have to select a charity and bid for a place with them. Those bids have to start at over 100,000 yen, which in today's money is about $640. Now, if you want to really feel secure that you're going to get a place, you're going to have to bid more than that minimum. And I've seen mention in Facebook groups that bidding around double the 640 is what you really need to be going for to feel secure. The charities are going to look at those bids and select the highest bids in most cases. You will also need to write a short kind of essay about why you want to run for that charity. So, having a charity that really means something to you can be a huge advantage here. The other thing to consider is moving quickly. So the bidding opens in June, and a lot of the charities will select if they have two bids the same based on who bid first. So it's worth getting there early. Now, the other big thing to mention is that unlike equivalent charities in the US or the UK, where I am, you need to come up with the money straight away if you're selected. They do not let you set up a fundraising page. There is no support. You're just expected on day one to hand over the amount of money that you've bid. And then it's up to you to try and work out how you might get that money back in terms of sponsorship from people. So charity route is the most popular for Westerners, or definitely one of the most popular. Is probably cheaper route to go down than a sports tour company, but let's get to that next. So another route that Westerners use to get into the Tokyo Marathon is through sports travel agents like Sports Tours International or Sports Tours. These companies will get a number of places in the races, but from what I've seen and heard, that number of places far less than they would get in other races. For example, New York, it seems almost like they have an unlimited number of places to fill. In Tokyo, they definitely have a finite number of places, and they tend to open up a waiting list and ask you to state how many times you've traveled with them. The travel agent route is actually how I got into the Tokyo Marathon, and I had to say how many times I traveled with the company, which races I'd done with them, and prove that I was an existing valued customer to be considered for a place in the race. I was lucky enough to be selected, but if you've never traveled with one of these companies before, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get in through this route. I guess the other thing with when comparing this to the charities is it's probably more expensive. To me, I looked at the prices and I felt for the quality and position of the hotel, uh, I wasn't paying that much more than I would if I'd booked the same kind of accommodation and gone the charity route. But obviously, if you're on a budget, the charity route and finding a much cheaper hotel is going to be a lower cost way to do the marathon. And the final way to try and get into the Tokyo Marathon as a non-elite Western runner would be through the Abbott World Marathon draw. So if you're doing the 6 marathon majors and you're registered with Abbott, ticking off those majors on their website, then you'll be eligible if you've done 4 or more of the majors but haven't done Tokyo to put yourself forward for a draw. They have a small number of places. Let's be honest, there's very little chance that you're going to get in that way. So that is the different ways that you can get into the marathon. So a few other things about the Tokyo Marathon. Firstly, the cost of doing it. So for me, I think it probably cost me about £3,500. That's about $4,000. So is it worth it? Personally, for me, I'm doing the 6 marathon majors. Uh, this is what I do for enjoyment. Yeah, I really felt it was a special experience, something that I'll always remember. So for me, it was worth the money. So about the marathon itself is an incredible flat course. It starts off with a downhill. It's a little crowded at the start, but I thought it was a really good course. I got a far better time than I felt I deserved considering my training. So I was really happy with my experience there. It's a well-supported big city marathon, and as you might expect, with a city with that many people, they really get out and support it. And Japanese people love running. It is really part of their culture, and there's a huge amount of support on the streets. There's a huge amount of support for runners, and it was just an absolutely brilliant experience. Going to Japan, I would really recommend that you get an eSIM for your phone so you can make sure that you have access to the internet from your phone. I found that to be really something that I couldn't do without. I could navigate through Google Maps using the internet anytime I wanted. I could use my phone to translate menus. Um, eSIM, I think mine cost me about £35 for unlimited data. It really was one of the best decisions that I made. Now, when I first went to Japan 20 years ago, I really found that people didn't tend to speak English. But I was really surprised this year by that, how much that has changed. I think virtually everyone I spoke to in restaurants, in cafes, in hotels, spoke very good English, or at least passable. So really communicating was not an issue. And there are apps if you get stuck. We did have a conversation with the waitress where we couldn't quite get what was going on with the meal. She used her translation app to tell us that we'd not paid for enough dishes for everybody. So I really think that is something that if you're concerned about communication, it's not something to worry about these days. And another big tip would be to go to Kyoto. If you have time, I'd really recommend going to Kyoto. Just such an amazing city, and I really enjoyed like climbing up the hills through all these red gates to different temples. It's perhaps not the thing to do on the day after the marathon or the day before, but if your trip is long enough, I'd really recommend going to Kyoto. And finally, our ramen tour. I did a tour with something called 5 a.m. ramen, which took us to 4 different places to have ramen. I thought it was an amazing tour, really great food, and found places that I went back to other days to have food. And in terms of carb loading, it just seems like the perfect thing to do. So if you're going to the Tokyo Marathon, look up 5 a.m. ramen tours and book yourself a tour. It was really good. So I hope that if you do get in the Tokyo Marathon, that you have an amazing time. It was such a good experience for me. One of my favorite marathon majors. Definitely an experience that is different from the European and American runs. Something I'll never forget. So good luck with getting into the race, and maybe I'll see you on the start line.